Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really cool theory called locally Bayesian learning. It tries to solve a huge contradiction in how we think. And honestly, it might just change how you think about, well, thinking.
All right, let's start with a puzzle. A real head-scratcher for cognitive scientists. On one hand, the human mind is this incredible supercomputer, right? It can write symphonies, it can send people to the moon. But on the other hand, that same mind can be tricked by the simplest biases, making these weird, predictable mistakes. So what gives? How can our brains be so brilliant and yet so easy to fool?
This big contradiction, being a genius one minute and a bit of a klutz the next, has really split the scientific community. It's led them down two totally different roads, creating what you could call a tale of two theories in the world of cognitive science. So you've got these two main camps. The first is the computational view. They're all about the what. They see the mind as a perfect statistician, always making the best possible decision. Then you have the algorithmic view. They focus on the how. They're looking at the nuts and bolts, the messy internal wiring that leads to all those glitches and biases we know so well. For the longest time, these two views just didn't seem to fit together. I mean, how can the mind be both a perfect machine and a flawed one at the same time? Well, that's where this really clever theory called Locally Bayesian Learning, or LBL for short, comes into play. It acts like a peacemaker, building this fantastic bridge between the two ideas.
So, what's the big idea behind LBL? It's surprisingly simple but pretty profound. It says, hey, what if the mind isn't one single giant computer? What if it's more like a team of highly trained specialists? Each specialist, or module, is perfectly rational on its own. That's the Bayesian part. But, and this is the key, the only way they can talk to each other is by passing these short, simple little notes.
Probably the easiest way to picture this whole thing is to just think about your mind as if it were a big company. This corporation analogy works perfectly. Inside Mind Incorporated, you've got all these different departments, the vision department, language, memory, and so on. Each one is run by a total genius who is an expert in their field. The problem is, when the vision department needs to tell the memory department what it just saw, it can't send over the full high-def video file. Nope. All it can do is send a short memo. And as we all know from playing the telephone game, a lot can get lost in those little summaries. You know, this idea of a modular mind isn't just some convenient story. It's actually grounded in some pretty solid science. It comes right out of evolutionary psychology, which suggests our brain isn't some all-purpose supercomputer. It's much more like a Swiss Army knife, a whole collection of specialized tools that evolved to handle very specific problems our ancestors faced over and over again. Okay, so the theory sounds pretty convincing, but does it actually hold up in the real world? Let's put it to the test and see how LBL explains some of those everyday mental hiccups we're all familiar with. Think about this for a second. You make a quick mental grocery list. Milk, eggs, bread, cheese, butter, coffee. I'm willing to bet that when you get to the store, you remember milk and coffee without any problem. But that cheese in the middle? Poof, it's just gone. Why is it always the stuff in the middle that vanishes? And listen, that's not just you. It's a super well-known cognitive bias. It even has a name, a trial order effect. It's this 1-2 punch of remembering the first things you hear, called the primacy effect, and the last things, the recency effect. And get this, explaining this exact thing was the whole reason LBL was created in the first place. So how does LBL explain our disappearing cheese? Let's go back to Mind Inc. The first items, milk and eggs, are like the first memo of the day. They set the tone. The memory department gets it and thinks, okay, breakfast stuff. But as you add more items, the memos get simplified, and the details of those middle items just kind of get lost in the corporate shuffle. Then the last item, coffee, is the most recent memo to land on the desk. It's right there on top, fresh in the mind. And the stuff in the middle, it just gets squeezed out. But this whole idea is about so much more than just why you forgot the cheese. The core principles behind locally Bayesian learning have turned out to be a really big deal across a ton of different fields. Yeah, it really has grown from this small theory about memory into this huge foundational framework. It's giving researchers a whole new lens to look at pretty much everything about how we think, learn, and see the world. You can see its fingerprints everywhere now. Scientists are using LBL principles to build new models of learning, to understand how we change our beliefs over time. They're using it to figure out attention. How does that team of specialists in your head decide what to focus on? And this is wild, it's even being used in network theory to see how ideas spread through society, almost as if each person is a module in one giant social brain.
So let's bring it all back to that first puzzle. How can we be so brilliant and so biased all at once? Well, LBL gives us this really elegant answer. Our incredible power comes from having this all-star team of specialists. Our strange quirks, they come from the fact that this all-star team communicates with what are basically sticky notes. Our genius and our glitches aren't opposites at all. They're two sides of the very same coin. And that leaves us with one last kind of mind-bending question to chew on. If your mind is a team of expert departments, all passing memos back and forth, who's the coach? Who's sitting in the CEO's office calling the shots? It's a question that takes us right to the very heart of what consciousness even is.